It's the Brad and John Show.
Brad and John Show. Today's date is June 27th. This is the C block, which means we started right around 7:40 or so. We're actually pretty close to that one. It's 7:41, John. How about that for being on time this morning?
That's a miracle. It's a walking miracle.
It is a miracle. Okay, in the, A block, B block, I talked about the fact that I did make a 911 call a couple weeks ago. I was at a gas station. I knew the manager. The manager was having problems with the customer. Turned out the customer was not really a customer. He comes in and loiters in the store and causes problems. And sometimes, from what I've been told by other people, not the manager of the store, he harasses the patrons. So the manager, it started out, I was in the store. The manager said to him, get out. It was very pleasant to him at first. And then the guy got really bad and ended up in the parking lot. I dialed 911. I'm fueling my vehicle. And the police show up. And ultimately, he resists arrests. And he ends up face down in the parking lot with his back, with his handcuffs, hands handcuffed behind his back. Okay. The interesting part of this is that I know somebody on this police department, and I reached out to them afterwards, and it's not necessarily, back in the day, we had a term for this. We called them known characters. And I don't know if they still use that term or not, but you know what the definition of a known character was?
I guess it's somebody that has frequent interactions with police officers.
If you watch the Bosch series, Harry Bosch will call these people S-birds, and you can imagine what S stands for. And what's really sort of interesting about this is that if you go to any police department, practically anywhere, and you talk to any of the beat cops, guys who are, literally doing, driving the beat, walking the beat. You don't see too many cops walking the beat anymore, but driving the beat where they have a patrol area or stuff like that. They can tell you their top 10. You know what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, of course they can.
Which is kind of sad because, now, I will tell this story. This is not a crazy weird story. This is a true story. In my beginnings of my career in the radio business, I had a guy, and I don't know if he's still alive or not. I'm not going to mention his name, but I had a guy who was working at the station part-time, who sort of took me under his wing, and he helped me out quite a bit in the beginnings of my radio career. And he was honest to God, at the time, he was detective sergeant for a police department, and ultimately he became the chief of that department, and some people will be able to figure out who that was. And he told me that when he was a young man, now keep in mind, this has been when I first started, this is my coming on my 53rd year in the radio business, so this is probably 52 years ago. At the time, this guy was a police officer who was probably already had 25 years of experience. So we're talking things that happened 70, 75 years ago. He said the reason that the town he worked in had very low crime is because the chief would tell the officers, you know who the bad guys are. If we find them, take them outside the city limits, beat the crap out of them, and say, don't come back, and they didn't. Now, what's happened? Maybe we need to revisit that. Don't you think, John? Or is that a terrible thing to say?
Yeah, I think so. And I think in previous versions, when you told that story, they would usually take them downtown to St. Louis, right?
Yeah, they would take them into the city. They would literally take them into the city.
Yeah, and drop them off down there.
Right.
Well, I think now you have, if that happened and somebody happened to catch a cop from St. Charles County dumping somebody in Pagedale, somebody that was out doing no good at 2 a.m. would have their phone on them, and it would be on TikTok, and the next morning the officer would get fired.
I don't know. I mean, I would see, once again, you're probably right, because you can't do anything without anybody seeing you nowadays, that kind of a thing. Okay, construction season going on around the St. Louis area, okay? Sometimes I think MoDOT just tears things up just so they can, get their money and tear things up. Okay, my particular grief on this is they're going to they're going to tear down the Page overpass over Lindbergh. Now, as a guy who uses that quite a bit, I find nothing wrong with the Page overpass. Doesn't seem like there's any cracks in it. Doesn't seem like there's any problems with the expansion joints. Are they just tearing stuff down to tear it down?
Well, you probably don't have visibility into the engineering surveys of it, right, Brett?
Well, John, my question is this. How in the St. Louis area can we build a bridge called the Eads Bridge, which has been there since, 1855 or something like that? When was the Eads Bridge built? Do you have that?
A long time ago.
Before
there were OSHA regulations, that's for sure.
Right. How is it possible that you can build one bridge that's been there since I mean, like, for example, on 170, I'll give you a perfect example. I remember when they opened up the stretch of 170 from essentially Page up through 70. And the reason I know that is because we did a live broadcast there. Somewhere or another, I have a picture of me laying in the highway before they officially opened it. This is like they was going to have a ribbon cutting and the whole bit. Okay, my point being is there were two overpasses, the Midland overpass and the Lackland overpass. So these overpasses dated back to 1984. Okay, so that would make them what? 40 years old right now?
Yeah, 40 or 41 years old.
Okay, 2 years ago they tore them both down and rebuilt them. Now, how in the world can we build a bridge called the Eads Bridge, which has lasted for over a century and a half, maybe call it? How in the world can we build a bridge like that, and we can't build bridges that last for 40 or 50 years? John, explain that to me.
I think maybe the problem with the bridge that you're talking about is that it has the name Page in it, which means that if we just took a bunch of, stray pets and slaughtered them and sacrificed them to the Page Bridge, then maybe the Page Bridge would be okay. You get what I'm saying there, Brad?
Okay, I just looked this up. Work on the bridge began in 1867. 1867 was completed in 1874. It took them, 8 years to build the bridge? 7 years to build the bridge? 1874. So the Eads Bridge is 1874 to 1974 would be 100 years. 74 to 2025 would be what? 51 years? So it's 151 years?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
151-year-old bridge, and it's still in use today. And matter of fact, it's the way you get the Metrolink trains from Missouri into Illinois and back and forth. I don't understand it. I mean, and here we go again. There was an article that appeared earlier this week, we didn't talk about it, that St. Luke's hospital system is going to close down their location there on 270 at Doherty Ferry. You know which hospital I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do know which one, yeah.
Okay, and the article read, well, it's near its end of life expectancy because it was built 50 years ago. I don't get it. Go to Europe and you go to hospitals that are like 300 years old. What is? Are we doing things poorly here in the United States? Is our concrete substandard, or our bricks less than they should be? I mean, why is it that a building is 50 years old? And take that one step further. If you say, it's past its EOL, end of life. It's 50 years old. Tell that to all the people that want to buy all those 80 and 90-year-old houses in Kirkwood and Webster Groves. Oh, it's past its life expectancy. It's over 50 years old. We'll have to tear it down. Now, I know they are tearing some of them down to make McMansions. But get what I'm saying, John? I don't understand this.
I get what you're saying. But don't you think, we could be conspiratorial here, and don't you think there are enough construction companies that go to the big hospitals and say, hey, I know you think that facility's fine, but you could probably finance this and get us to build a super great whatever, that's more ADA compliant, that has more whatever. I don't know. There's got to be a financial incentive for them to do it. Now, in your case, Brad, when you talk about the MoDOT bridge, there's no necessarily incentive to be fiscally responsible because it's taxpayer money.
So in other words, they can just tear it down and whatever.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Okay, back in the days of before there was the breakup of Ma Bell, when we had, the regional bells and the whole bit, there was all sorts of conspiracy theories about the Bell operating companies. We had Southwestern Bell, that they were making so much money, they had to do things just to spend some of their money. And at the time, one of my family members worked for Southwestern Bell. And he would tell the story about sometimes they would put on jobs where they would put in new cable to replace old cable, when there was nothing wrong with the old cable. It was just that they needed to spend money, so they put in new cable, and then they cut over the new cable and took out the old cable. And it was like, okay, was there a problem with the old cable? No, nothing wrong with it. We just were out there spending money. What frustrates me is you see these utilities, and they all, like you see the Missouri American War trucks, they're all driving around in brand new trucks. The Ameren UE guys. And for you, your lobbyists or John Combest friends listening right now, you don't see any old dilapidated Ameren UE trucks. They always have nice new trucks and things like that. Maybe instead of spending all the money on all the stuff, cut our rates. But no, can't do that, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, let's get back to the Page Avenue thing, Brad. I guess traffic is going to have to be diverted. You have to take Shoops Road, or what are you going to have to do there?
No, they're doing a deal where they're going to divert the traffic. So in other words, they're going to chop down the eastbound span of the bridge, and then they're going to essentially divert. Instead they're going to have the lanes sort of narrow down. They've been working on it already. You can't use any of the ramps. The ramps are all closed down right now, so you can't go like from eastbound Page onto northbound Lindbergh, or from westbound Page on the southbound Lindbergh, stuff like that. And I don't know if they're going to change the thing around. They did the thing right by your old workplace, right there at Lindbergh and Olive, where they completely changed that intersection. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do know what you're talking about. And I used to take that all the time. I mean, that's
right.
And I'm not alone there, but there's a ton of people. To your point, Brad, there's a ton of people who use that intersection.
Right. And they changed it all around where it used to be like loops, and now it's not loops anymore. It's traffic signals. And the crazy thing about it is I thought MoDOT, and it's sort of interesting because at one point in time, I can remember this going back into my traffic network days when it never came up with when I was on the committee, but there were people saying, hey, why don't you guys take a look at roundabouts? And MoDOT was absolutely positively against roundabouts. They were, roundabouts, those are terrible. Well, they work in Europe, and you know what the MoDOT guys said to those people?
Then move to Europe if you want them so bad.
That's exactly what they said. They said, if you want roundabouts, move to Europe. And I thought to myself, you know what? If I didn't hate these MoDOT guys, I would have loved that what they just said. But now everywhere you go, there's roundabouts. As a matter of fact, the ultimate roundabout area is the new overpass. Actually, it's the overpass been there a long time, but the interchange at Goodermuth. Okay, you know what I'm talking about in St. Charles County?
I do, Brett. I was on Goodermuth yesterday.
Have you gone through the three roundabouts right there?
Yeah, I know exactly where you're talking about.
Is that bizarre or what?
Yeah, and it's so easy to. I thankfully have not gone the wrong way on it.
Right.
But, and it's hard to tell exactly where to get off there.
Yes.
Pardon the expression, but it's hard to tell exactly where to get off. And, of course, there's ones in Wildwood. There's a roundabout at, Brad, exactly where you were talking about before, the MoDOT building at 141 and 40. Right. There's roundabouts through there on that Woods Mill Road.
How about a 109 from
in Wildwood, right?
Right. There's one if you're going east on 40. If you get off there at on 109, there's a roundabout there, and then there's another one on the north side of there, and then you go a little bit further, and then there's another roundabout. And it's like, okay, are you guys go from? Is this like the kind of thing where you say, I'll never wear flip-flops, and some guy all of a sudden, all you see him, he's wearing a three-piece suit, and he's got flip-flops on. He's going, I thought you said you're never going to wear flip-flops. Well, I tried them, and man, I love them, and I just can't take them off. Is it that kind of a deal, you think, John?
Yeah, I think so. And, I mean, there's probably something to be said. Now, what I think, if MoDOT was serious about Page Avenue, they would just put in more bump outs. So they would just remove the bridge and then put a bunch of bump outs in. And then I think everybody would be happy.
And by the way, did those things disappear in a hurry or what?
Yeah, when a government has an incentive, I guess, to move quickly. Ben Keithley doesn't mess around. He said you guys will remove those or else.
Oh, breaking news. You're not going to believe this. From a very reliable source, we have another Chiefs update.
Oh, no way, Brad. When you said reliable source, I thought maybe you meant Boomer Facebook, but now we just mean Boomer Brain from Brad. Yeah.
No, reliable update from Info Dude. He's saying the news is out. The Hoffmanns have bought the Kansas City Chiefs. They're moving them to Augusta, and they will be known as the Missouri Grape Stompers.
That's terrific. Now, by the way, Mike Otten is actually a reliable source, so I would be way more willing to accept that at face value than from you, Brad. That's great. And then so you could say that maybe the Washington Missourian would have exclusive locker room privileges. No other reporters could come in.
See, John, you and I, we bantied about this Hoffmann thing. If you don't know who the Hoffmanns are, the Hoffmann, as the story goes, what was his name? Her name is Jerry Hoffmann, Jerri. And the story is, this is like this, like a storybook couple. This is a couple that met in Washington. She was the rich one. She went to Borgia High School. And what's his name? David Hoffmann?
Yes, his name is David Hoffmann.
David Hoffmann was the boy from the other side of the tracks in Washmo. And the interesting part of that is if you live in the other side of the tracks in Washmo, you live in the river because the tracks are right along the river. But anyway.
We got it. Go ahead, Brad.
Anyway, It's these two lovers that met in high school. She was rich. He was poor. As a matter of fact, he didn't even have a pot to piss in or water to drink because they had no running water in his house. And now he's a billionaire and he buys stuff up like crazy. And he buys this, he buys that. Did you see he's in the news yesterday?
No, what happened yesterday?
He's moving, or at least they're expanding the Missouri Athletic Club to a third location in one of the...
In Clayton, I did see that headline, Brad.
In one of the Pierre Leclerc buildings that he bought. And see, the interesting part of this is, John and I got into a little bit of discussion a couple weeks back about the fact that I was saying, well, look what the Hoffmanns did. And I'm telling you, there are people right now. John Lamping, if we called him up right now and he got him away if we got him out of the Cardinals.
He would never let you have his number. Go ahead, Brad.
General manager's office. And we said, John, stop managing the Cardinals for a minute and talk to us. I think if we injected sodium pentothal into John Lamping's veins, he would say, you're right. The Hoffmanns ruined Augusta. I'm telling you, as a guy who goes through Augusta almost on at least one time a week, there was a point in time, you go back 3, 4, 5 years ago, when I used to drive 94, essentially from Washmo all the way up into St. Charles County, and the traffic was horrible. You get all these people, and you get the people, especially if you're going from Augusta back into St. Charles County, you get all the drunks who are doing 25 miles an hour who can't drive their car, and it's 55 miles an hour.
And let's cut to the chase. You say nobody's going to Augusta anymore because the Hoffmanns have bought everything and destroyed it.
Well, John, here's the problem. I think the problem is, and I'll give you a perfect example. This is the classic example of UPOD. If the Hoffmanns would have come along and quietly said, you know what, we're going to start making an investment in Augusta, and we're going to start buying this and buying that, and we're going to really do some good things in Augusta. But instead, they come along, we are the second coming of Christ, and we're going to make this into Napa East. And, it's going to be wonderful. We're going to build a 4,000-room hotel, and we're going to a helipad and 42-hole golf course and stuff like that. And that's what they did, and now everybody's going like, okay, they said they were going to do this. They didn't do any of that, and now they're selling anything. It's just like when you go through, and this is kind of sad. As a guy who's driven through Defiance for probably 2 decades, there was a time, this time of the year, when you drive through Defiance, and at the S-curve right there, anybody who's driven through Defiance, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There were the 2 biker bars, and one was named like Terry and Bill's.
Yeah,
and the other
you
one,
told this story 2 weeks ago.
Okay, the one is abandoned now. There's nothing there. Somebody tried, the Wenties tried it, and they failed, and that was bought by the Hoffmanns. And then the one across the street was Don's place, which was Don Simon, who's their local CEO. That's now Stone Ledge Winery or something like that, and there's never anybody there. They killed that business in Defiance. Killed it, Killed. And to the point where it's like, once upon a time, that was a vibrant spot for bikers. I'm not one of them, but there were a lot of people that went there. In Defiance, some of the people in Defiance may not have liked it. But
and when you say bikers, you don't mean motorists.
No, I'm talking mainly guys and gals on Harleys.
Yeah, okay, let's be clear, because when I hear biker bar, Brad, I think guys on Harleys.
Right, and the rule was, actually there was a sign if you're coming from like from like Highway 40, you come into Defiance, and there was a sign that said, there was the dress code, and it said, women are not allowed to wear bras, halter tops only. Men have to wear boots, jeans, a T-shirt that's black that said Sturgis on it, and their wallet has to be on a chain. That's what the rules were. You don't think I'm kidding, aren't you? No, they've killed it. And there's a guy who I met at a meet and greet. Actually, was a business, one of these things you pass out, trading business cards, like a, mixer after hours kind of deal.
We got it at 8:00. We got it. Keep going.
A guy who knows the area extremely well. And I said to him, hey, what do you think about what's going on in Augusta? And he looked at me and he said 4 words. The Hoffmanns killed it. That's what he said.
Yeah, and for folks who want to hear this, everything that Brad has just said, we talked about on June 10th. It's episode 377. You can hear it on Apple Podcasts. If you go and you look up the Brad and John Show, you can find episode 377, and we discussed every element that Brad just said. You could hear it for the first time on that day.
John, and perfect example. If I say to you, John, you've done such a good job in the show, I'm going to get you a car. And if the car shows up at your house on the back of a tow truck, you're going to go, I don't know if that's such a good deal. What am I going to do with it? And the guy unloads it, goes, hey, I don't have any keys for it, and I don't think it has a battery in it.
It's Brad, that would be the definition of looking a gift Pinto in the mouth.
But if I said, John, there's this car dealership down in Chesterfield Valley.
I got to get in a car and head to St. Charles County a minute ago, Brad.
There's a guy there's a place down in St. Charles County, and there's a car waiting for you. You show up, and it's a brand new Lamborghini. You're going to go, boy,
and I'm going to say,
guy.
Brad clearly didn't pay for this.
Say goodbye, John.
See you tomorrow. See you Monday, Brad.